You trapped my son with that baby! My mother-in-law Monica screamed across the elegant restaurant, her voice cutting through the anniversary celebration like a blade. I calmly set down my champagne flute and reached into my purse. "You're absolutely right about the timing, Monica," I said, pulling out the ultrasound photo, "but not in the way you think." The moment I walked into Bella Corte, the upscale Italian restaurant where my husband Corey and I were supposed to be celebrating our second wedding anniversary, I knew this wasn't going to be the romantic evening I'd imagined.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Tell us a duh.
The hostess had seated us at a large circular table in the center of the dining room. Strange, since I'd specifically requested our usual intimate corner booth when making the reservation. Even stranger was seeing Monica Gilmore, my mother-in-law, already seated at the table with a glass of wine, her steel gray hair pulled back in what I'd come to recognize as her battle mode bun. "Surprise!" she called out with theatrical warmth that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. "I thought it would be lovely for family to celebrate together." Her emphasis on the word family sent an immediate chill down my spine. Monica had made it clear from day one that she didn't consider me worthy of that designation. Corey appeared equally surprised, his dark eyebrows furrowing as he glanced between his mother and me. "Mom, what are you doing here? We didn't—" His words died as Monica's sister Erica emerged from the restroom, followed by Corey's cousin Ricky and his wife Phoebe. This wasn't a surprise. It was an ambush. The table had been arranged with military precision. Monica commanded the head position, with clear sightlines to every other seat. Erica, her faithful lieutenant, sat to her immediate right, while Ricky and Phoebe flanked the opposite side. They'd left exactly 2 chairs available, directly across from Monica, like defendants' seats in a courtroom. The spacing was too calculated to be coincidental. "Sit, sit," Monica gestured imperiously toward our designated spots. "I've already ordered wine for the table. The Chianti Classico you love, Erica." Not the Pinot Grigio I preferred, of course, not that anyone had asked. As we settled into our chairs, I caught the subtle glances passing between the assembled family members. Erica kept checking her phone with nervous frequency, while Phoebe's usual chatty demeanor had been replaced by uncomfortable silence. Ricky, normally the family peacemaker, couldn't seem to meet my eyes. They all knew something I didn't. The server approached with practiced professionalism, but I noticed how Monica waved him away when he started to hand us menus. "We'll need a few more minutes," she declared, her voice carrying an authority that suggested this evening would follow her script entirely. "So," Monica began, her manicured fingers drumming against the white tablecloth, "how are you feeling, dear?" The question seemed innocent enough, but her gaze dropped pointedly to my still flat stomach. At barely 8 weeks pregnant, I wasn't showing yet, but somehow Monica knew. We hadn't told anyone about the pregnancy except my own mother, and I'd sworn her to secrecy until after the first trimester. My blood ran cold. "I'm fine, thank you for asking." I kept my voice steady, though my mind raced. How could she possibly know? "Oh, I'm sure you are," Monica replied with a smile that reminded me of a shark sensing blood in the water. "Pregnancy can be so overwhelming, especially when the timing is so—" She paused dramatically, letting the word hang in the air like a sword over my head. Corey's hand found mine under the table, his grip tense. "Mom, what are you talking about?" But Monica wasn't finished. She opened her designer handbag with theatrical precision and withdrew a manila folder, placing it on the table between us like evidence in a trial. "I think we need to have a very honest conversation about timing, Greta." The restaurant buzzed with evening diners around us, couples sharing romantic meals, families celebrating birthdays, business associates closing deals over dessert. The normalcy of their conversations created a surreal backdrop to whatever Monica was orchestrating. A waiter passed our table carrying a flaming dessert, and for a moment, the orange glow illuminated Monica's face with an almost demonic intensity. Erica leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We've all been doing some math, dear, and the numbers just don't add up." I felt Corey's grip on my hand tighten. His confusion was genuine. He had no idea what his family was planning. That knowledge hurt almost as much as their accusations. My husband of 2 years, the man who'd promised to protect me from exactly this kind of family drama, was as blindsided as I was. "What math?" I asked, though part of me already suspected where this was heading. Monica's smile widened, revealing teeth that suddenly looked predatory. "Well, you announced your pregnancy to us 3 days ago. According to what you told Corey, you're 8 weeks along." She opened the manila folder with surgical precision. "But I've been keeping track of certain details." From the folder, she produced what appeared to be a calendar, covered in her neat handwriting. Dates were circled in red ink, with notes scrawled in the margins. My stomach dropped as I realized she'd been tracking my menstrual cycle, my work schedule, even the nights when Corey had business trips. "According to my calculations," Monica continued, her voice gaining strength and volume, "there's a very specific window when this conception would have occurred. And Corey," she turned her predatory gaze toward her son, "you were in Denver that entire week for the Silas Corporation merger. Remember? You called me every night complaining about the long hours and boring hotel room."
The accusation hit the table like a bomb. Ricky actually gasped, while Phoebe's hand flew to her mouth in theatrical shock. Erica nodded with grim satisfaction, as if a long-held suspicion had finally been confirmed. Corey's face went white, then red, then white again. "Mom, you can't seriously be suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Monica interrupted, her voice rising just enough to capture the attention of nearby diners. "I'm stating facts. Mathematical, indisputable facts." The folder yielded more evidence. Printed emails showing Corey's hotel confirmations in Denver, restaurant receipts time-stamped during the supposed conception window, even a photo of him at a client dinner on what Monica had calculated as the critical date. My heart hammered against my ribs, but a strange calm settled over me, because Monica Gilmore had made one crucial error in her elaborate trap. She was absolutely right about the timing, just not in the way she thought. The ultrasound photo in my purse felt like it was burning a hole through the leather. The date stamp that would destroy her carefully constructed narrative was clear as day, if only she'd been smart enough to actually look at it properly. "You trapped my son with that baby." Monica's voice finally erupted, her composure cracking like ice in spring. Every head in the restaurant turned toward our table, conversations stopping mid-sentence as diners stared at the family drama unfolding before them. I reached into my purse with steady hands, my fingers closing around the ultrasound photo that would change everything. The paper felt smooth and cool, carrying the weight of truth that would shatter Monica's world. "You're absolutely right about the timing, Monica," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent restaurant, "but not in the way you think." The silence that followed my words stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Monica's triumphant expression flickered with the first hint of uncertainty, but she quickly masked it with renewed aggression. Around us, the restaurant had transformed into an unwitting theater with dozens of strangers now invested in our family drama. "Don't try to deflect this with word games, Greta," Monica hissed, her voice dropping back to a venomous whisper that somehow felt more threatening than her earlier outburst. But I wasn't ready to play my hand yet. 3 weeks of careful planning had taught me that timing was everything, and Monica hadn't finished exposing herself. I slipped the ultrasound photo back into my purse and folded my hands calmly on the table. "Please, continue with your presentation. I'm fascinated by the thoroughness of your research." Erica practically vibrated with excitement at my apparent capitulation.
Oh, there's so much more, she breathed, leaning across the table like a gossip columnist who'd stumbled onto the story of the century. Tell her about the private investigator, Monica. My blood froze, but I kept my expression neutral. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A private investigator? I thought I'd been so careful during my own investigation 3 weeks ago. Had they been watching me while I was watching them? Monica's smile returned full force. Yes, well, I believe in being thorough when protecting my family. Mr. Anton DeVille comes highly recommended for delicate situations. She spoke the private investigator's name like she was introducing a secret weapon. From the folder came a stack of photographs, each one time-stamped and annotated in Monica's precise handwriting. My mouth whined dry as I saw myself entering and leaving my office building, stopping at the grocery store, even sitting in my car outside Dr. Richardson's office 3 weeks ago when I'd gone to get my own evidence. Mr. DeVille has been very productive, Monica continued, spreading the photos across the white tablecloth like she was dealing cards in a high-stakes poker game. These document your movements over the past month. Particularly interesting are the visits to medical facilities that aren't your usual obstetrician. Corey grabbed one of the photos, his face darkening with a mixture of confusion and growing anger. Mom, you hired someone to follow my wife. What the hell is wrong with you? Language, Corey. Monica snapped automatically, and I did what was necessary to protect you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Ricky shifted uncomfortably in his seat, finally speaking up for the first time since this nightmare began. Aunt Monica, don't you think this is going a bit far? Maybe we should discuss this privately? Privately? Monica's laugh was bitter and sharp. Privacy is exactly what allowed this deception to flourish. No, Ricky, sunlight is the best disinfectant, as they say. Phoebe nodded eagerly, her earlier shock having morphed into the excited energy of someone witnessing premium drama. It's better to know the truth, even when it hurts, she added, though her tone suggested she was enjoying this far more than she should. The waiter approached tentatively, probably wondering if he should call security or just pretend our table didn't exist. Would you like to see the wine list? He asked with admirable professionalism. Later, Monica dismissed him with an imperial wave. We're having a family discussion. I watched the server retreat, noting how other diners were straining to listen to our conversation. An elderly couple at the next table had abandoned all pretense of eating, their posture growing cold as they focused on our drama. A business dinner 2 tables away had devolved into whispered speculation about what they were witnessing. Monica was savoring every moment of this public humiliation, but she had no idea that every witness she was gathering would soon turn against her.
Now, Monica continued, producing yet another document from her seemingly bottomless folder, let's discuss your visit to Dr. Carson's clinic last Tuesday. That's not your regular gynecologist, is it? My heart skipped, but not for the reason Monica thought. Dr. Carson was indeed the physician I'd visited, but not for the reason she assumed. I'd gone there to get a second opinion and additional documentation, knowing that Monica's investigation would uncover the visit and jump to the wrong conclusions. You see, Corey, Erica chimed in, women don't visit random doctors unless they're trying to hide something. Clearly, she needed someone who wouldn't ask uncomfortable questions about timing. Corey's jaw tightened, and I could see the seeds of doubt that his family had been planting beginning to sprout. 3 weeks ago, when I'd first discovered their plan, I'd watched this same expression cross his face, the terrible moment when love battles suspicion and both lose. Greta, he said quietly, is there something you need to tell me? The hurt in his voice almost broke my resolve. My husband, the man who'd held my hair when morning sickness struck, who'd excitedly called his best friend about becoming a father, was being systematically turned against me by his own family. The cruelty was breathtaking. I think, I said carefully, that your family should finish their presentation before I respond to anything. Monica's eyes glittered with satisfaction. How very diplomatic. But we're not quite finished, are we, Erica? Erica practically bounced in her seat as she pulled out her phone. I've been doing some social media research too, she announced, swiping through screenshots she'd apparently saved. Look at this Facebook post from 6 months ago. The phone screen showed a photo I'd completely forgotten about, a casual snapshot from a work happy hour where I was holding a martini glass and laughing with colleagues. The date stamp clearly showed it was from 3 months before my wedding to Corey. And here, Erica continued, producing another photo, is one from your bachelorette party. Same man in the background of both photos. I squinted at the screen, recognizing my former colleague, Jake, who transferred to the Portland office months ago. In the happy hour photo, he was barely visible in the background. In the bachelorette photo, he wasn't even looking at our group, just happened to be in the same restaurant. That's Jake Morrison, I said flatly. He worked in our accounting department until he transferred to Oregon. Convenient that he's no longer around to verify that story, Monica replied smoothly. Men have been known to come back for unfinished business. The implication was so ridiculous that I almost laughed. Jake was happily married with 3 kids and about as romantically threatening as a golden retriever. But I could see how Monica had crafted her narrative, weaving innocent coincidences into a web of fictional infidelity. Around us, the restaurant had essentially become our audience. The elderly couple was now openly staring. The business dinner had moved chairs for better sightlines, and even the waitstaff had found reasons to linger near our table. Monica had orchestrated this perfectly. Maximum witnesses for what she believed would be my complete social destruction. The irony was delicious. "Are you quite finished?" I asked, checking my watch with deliberate casualness. "Because I have something to show all of you, something that might change your perspective on timing." Monica's confidence wavered slightly, but Erica jumped in with renewed venom. "What could you possibly show us that would explain away mathematical impossibility?" I smiled for the first time since sitting down. "Oh, you'd be surprised what a simple date stamp can reveal." The atmosphere at our table had shifted from tense to electric, like the air before a thunderstorm. Monica's confidence remained steady, but I caught the micro-expression that flickered across her face when I mentioned the date stamp, a split second of uncertainty quickly buried beneath layers of practiced superiority. "Date stamps can be manipulated," Erica said quickly. "Digital documents aren't reliable evidence anymore. Anyone with basic computer skills can alter them." It was a telling response. Too quick, too defensive. They'd clearly discussed this possibility during their planning sessions, which meant they knew their evidence wasn't as ironclad as they were pretending. Monica leaned back in her chair, studying me with the calculating gaze of a chess player who just realized her opponent might not be the amateur she'd assumed. "You seem remarkably calm for someone whose deception has been exposed so thoroughly." "Should I be hysterical?" I asked, taking a deliberate sip of my water. "Would that make you feel better about ambushing your son's pregnant wife at what was supposed to be our anniversary dinner?" Corey's face was a battlefield of competing emotions. I could see him wrestling with the evidence his family had presented versus the woman he'd fallen in love with and married. The fact that he was struggling at all hurt more than I'd expected, but I reminded myself that Monica had been working on him for weeks before tonight. "The timing really is problematic," Phoebe said softly, attempting to play the role of concerned family member rather than eager spectator. 8 weeks would put conception right during Corey's business trip. You have to understand how that looks." "I understand exactly how it looks," I replied. "The question is whether anyone cares how it actually is." Ricky cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe we could discuss this somewhere more private. People are starting to stare." "Let them stare," Monica declared, her voice rising again. "I'm not ashamed of protecting my son from a woman who trapped him with another man's child."
The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Several nearby diners had given up all pretense of eating, their meals forgotten as they focused on our family drama.
A young couple at the bar had actually turned their stools to face our table, treating us like dinner theater. I reached into my purse again, my fingers finding the ultrasound photo that would demolish Monica's carefully constructed narrative. But something made me pause. Maybe it was the absolute certainty in her voice, or the way Erica was practically vibrating with anticipation. They were so sure they'd won. "Monica," I said quietly, "before I respond to your accusations, I'm curious about something. This investigation of yours, the private detective, the calendar tracking, the social media research, how long have you been planning this?" She straightened in her chair, pride overriding caution. "A mother's intuition never sleeps. I knew something was wrong from the moment you announced the pregnancy." "So, you've been tracking my menstrual cycle since I married your son?" The blunt question hit the table like a slap. Even Erica looked uncomfortable, while Ricky actually pushed back from the table slightly. Phoebe's eyes went wide with what might have been genuine shock. "I pay attention to details," Monica said defensively. "Someone has to look out for Corey's interests." "His interests," I repeated slowly. "Not his happiness, not his choice in partners. His interests." Corey's voice was strained when he finally spoke. "Mom, you've been tracking Greta's personal cycles? That's incredibly invasive." "It's practical," Monica snapped. "If she's going to claim a pregnancy that doesn't fit the timeline, someone needs to document the discrepancies." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Monica was starting to reveal the true scope of her obsession, and even her allies were beginning to look disturbed. The elegant restaurant around us buzzed with whispered conversations as other diners absorbed what they were hearing. "Tell me," I continued, "did your private investigator, Mr. DeVille, uncover anything else interesting during his surveillance?" Monica's smile returned, sharp as a blade. "Oh, yes. Your little shopping trip to the pharmacy 3 weeks ago was particularly enlightening. Emergency contraception purchases don't typically coincide with pregnancy announcements." The lie was so bold, so completely fabricated, that I almost admired her audacity. But I could see how it would play to an audience that already wanted to believe the worst about me. "Emergency contraception?" Corey's voice was barely above a whisper. "The pharmacy security footage was quite clear," Erica added, producing a blurry printout that could have been anyone buying anything. "Date and time-stamped, just like you mentioned." I studied the grainy image, noting how conveniently unclear the figure's face was. Either their private investigator was remarkably incompetent, or this was a complete fabrication. Given how thorough the rest of their evidence was, I suspected the latter. "That's interesting," I said mildly, "because I haven't been to a pharmacy in over a month. My prenatal vitamins were prescribed by my doctor and delivered directly to my office." "Lies come so easily to you," Monica sighed dramatically. "It's almost impressive." The waiter appeared again, this time with what was clearly the manager, a distinguished man in an expensive suit who looked deeply uncomfortable with the drama unfolding in his establishment. "Is everything all right here?" the manager asked diplomatically. "Some of our other guests have expressed concern about the volume of your discussion." Monica turned her imperial gaze on him. "We're having a private family conversation. Surely your establishment values family, Mr. Hoffman," he replied stiffly. "And we absolutely value all our guests' comfort, which is why I'm hoping we can resolve this matter quickly." I could see Monica calculating whether to push back or play the victim. The decision showed on her face like cards being dealt. She chose martyrdom. "Of course," she said, dabbing at her eyes with her napkin, though I hadn't seen any actual tears. "It's just so difficult when you discover your son has been deceived by someone he trusted." Mr. Hoffman's expression shifted to uncomfortable sympathy, exactly as Monica had intended. She was playing the room like a violin, building her narrative with an audience of strangers who would remember only the broad strokes. Pregnant woman accused of infidelity, heartbroken mother-in-law, confused husband. But Monica had made one crucial mistake in her performance. She'd become so focused on the audience
that she'd forgotten about the evidence I was still holding. "Actually, Mr. Hoffman," I said, standing slowly from my chair, "I think we can resolve this matter right now. Would you mind if I shared something with the table? Something that might clarify the timeline issue that seems to be causing so much confusion?" Mr. Hoffman shifted nervously, clearly regretting his intervention. "Perhaps a private dining room would be more appropriate for family discussions?" "No," Monica said firmly, her hand shooting out to grip my wrist as I reached for my purse. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her manicured nails digging into my skin hard enough to leave marks. The gesture was possessive, controlling, and clearly visible to every witness in the restaurant. I didn't pull away, instead meeting her eyes with steady calm. "Of course," I said softly. "Transparency is so important in family relationships, isn't it?" Something in my tone made Monica's grip loosen slightly, but she didn't let go. Erica leaned forward eagerly, while Ricky looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. Phoebe was filming with her phone now, not even bothering to hide it.
Before Greta attempts to muddy the waters with whatever fabricated evidence she's prepared, Monica announced to the growing audience, I think everyone should understand the full scope of her deception. She reached into her seemingly bottomless manila folder and produced a thick stack of documents. "Bank statements," she declared, spreading them across the table like a dealer revealing a winning hand. "Notice the unusual activity? Large cash withdrawals on specific dates?" I glanced at the papers, recognizing my own account information. The violation of privacy was staggering, but what interested me more was how she'd obtained confidential banking records. That level of access required either sophisticated hacking or inside help. "Mom," Corey's voice was strained, "how did you get Greta's bank statements?" "A mother does what's necessary to protect her child," Monica replied smoothly, avoiding the question entirely. "Look at this withdrawal, $500 in cash, 2 days before you left for Denver, and another one here, the day after you returned." Erica nodded sagely. "Classic pattern for maintaining an affair. Cash transactions leave fewer digital traces." The accusation was so absurd that I almost laughed. Those withdrawals had been for the surprise anniversary trip to Napa Valley I'd been planning, the romantic getaway that was supposed to happen next weekend. The hotel required a cash deposit for their premium suite, and I'd withdrawn extra for wine tastings and dinners. All of which I could prove with receipts Monica apparently hadn't found. "Interesting theory," I said. "Do you have an explanation for this cash?" "I'm sure you'll come up with something creative," Monica replied. "You've had weeks to prepare your story." But she wasn't finished. From the folder came more evidence: printed emails, credit card statements, even what appeared to be medical records. The breadth of information was breathtaking and deeply illegal. "Your subscription to the pregnancy planning app," Erica read from a printout, "started 6 months ago, months before you claimed to have conceived." "Lots of women track their cycles," Phoebe gathered helpfully, "but combined with everything else." I felt Corey's stare boring into me, his confusion and hurt radiating like heat. The evidence was circumstantial, but damning when woven together by skilled manipulators. Every innocent action had been reframed as proof of deception. "The hotel records are particularly interesting," Monica continued, producing yet another document. "The Carson Hotel downtown. You've been there 3 times in the past 2 months. Always during lunch hours, always paying cash." This was news to me. I'd never been to the Carson Hotel, but the credit card statements Monica waved showed charges that clearly weren't mine. Either someone had cloned my card, or these documents were fabricated entirely. "I've never been to that hotel," I said flatly. "Of course you deny it," Erica sighed. "But the security footage doesn't lie." She produced a tablet, swiping to a video file that showed a woman entering a hotel lobby. The figure was about my height and build, but the image quality was too poor to make out facial features clearly. The timestamp showed dates when I'd been at work, in meetings with colleagues who could provide alibis. "That could be anyone," Corey said, studying the screen with growing skepticism. The clothing matches items from her closet, Monica replied smoothly. I've been documenting her wardrobe choices for the past month. The admission sent a collective shudder through our audience. Even the elderly couple at the next table exchanged disturbed glances. Monica had crossed from protective mother into stalker territory, but she seemed oblivious to how her behavior was being perceived. Mr. Hoffman cleared himself diplomatically. Perhaps we could move this discussion to our private event room. I'm afraid the other guests are learning valuable lessons about trusting the wrong people, Monica interrupted. Sometimes public accountability is the only way to stop destructive behavior. She turned back to me, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. You seduced my son with calculated precision, got pregnant immediately to lock him into marriage. And when that wasn't enough, you began your affair to ensure you'd have options no matter what happened. The narrative was sophisticated, internally consistent, and completely false. But I could see how it would convince anyone who didn't know the truth. Monica had painted me as a master manipulator while positioning herself as the protective mother who'd uncovered my schemes. The pregnancy announcement timing was perfect, wasn't it? Erica added. Right after Corey received his promotion. Right when his income doubled. Right when his stock options vested. More murmurs from our audience. They were building a financial motive now, suggesting I was a gold digger who'd trapped their golden boy. The crowd was eating it up like premium entertainment. And the affair provides perfect cover, Monica continued. If DNA tests ever become necessary, you can claim the timing was just unclear. Plant enough doubt to avoid definitive proof. Phoebe nodded enthusiastically. It's actually pretty clever, if you think about it. I felt the walls closing in, exactly as Monica had planned. Every piece of evidence built on the others, creating a narrative that seemed unshakable. The audience was convinced, Corey was wavering, and even Ricky looked like he believed his aunt's story. But Monica had made one critical error in her systematic attack. She'd become so focused on destroying me that she'd forgotten to consider what I might have discovered about her. You've been very thorough, I said finally. Impressively thorough, actually. The kind of thoroughness that raises its own questions. Monica's triumphant smile flickered slightly. What do you mean?
I said, pulling out not the ultrasound photo, but my own manila folder, that investigations work both ways. The appearance of my own manila folder sent a visible shock through Monica's carefully orchestrated presentation. Her face went through a rapid sequence of emotions, surprise, confusion, and then something that looked dangerously close to fear before she quickly masked it with renewed aggression. More fabricated evidence? She scoffed, but her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. How desperate you must be to— Actually, I interrupted gently, opening my folder with the same theatrical precision she'd used. I think our audience deserves to understand the full scope of what's been happening here, the real investigation. Erica leaned forward aggressively. What investigation? You're just deflecting because you can't explain away the evidence. Oh, I can explain everything, I said, pulling out the first document, a professional letterhead that made Monica's eyes widen with recognition. Starting with this invoice from DeVille Investigations, dated 3 months ago. 3 months, Monica, not 3 weeks like you claimed. The paper fluttered slightly in my hands, but my voice remained steady. Around us, the restaurant had fallen into complete silence. Even the kitchen seemed quieter, as if the entire establishment was holding its breath. Mr. Anton DeVille has been very thorough in documenting his services, I continued. Surveillance services, background checks, financial record acquisition, and, I paused for effect, document alteration services. Monica's face had gone ashen, but she rallied quickly. That's a forgery. You had that made to— Actually, it's not, I said, producing a second document. This is Mr. DeVille's confession, signed and notarized this afternoon. It turns out private investigators get nervous when their illegal activities are exposed to the state licensing board.
The confession was real. I'd spent the past 3 weeks building a case that would destroy Monica's entire operation. DeVille had cracked faster than I'd expected when faced with the choice between losing his license and telling the truth about his client's requests. Corey grabbed the confession, his hands shaking as he read. "Mom, this says you paid him to fabricate evidence, to create false bank statements, and—" "It says whatever she paid him to say," Monica snapped, but her voice was rising with panic. "Can't you see what's happening here? She's manipulating everyone, just like she manipulated you." But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. The tide had turned with visible suddenness, whispers spreading through the restaurant as diners processed what they were hearing. The elderly couple was shaking their heads in disgust, while the business dinner had devolved into heated ethical discussions. "There's more," I said quietly, pulling out a thick stack of financial records. "Monica, would you like to explain these wire transfers to offshore accounts, or should I let Mr. Hoffman and his guests know about your money laundering operation?" The accusation hit like a bomb. Monica shot to her feet so quickly her chair nearly toppled backward. "You little bitch," she hissed, all pretense of maternal concern evaporating. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Actually, I do," I replied, standing to meet her gaze. "I know about the Carson Hotel meetings, but not for an affair, for business. Specifically, your business with certain clients who prefer cash transactions and flexible documentation." Erica had gone white, her eyes darting between Monica and the growing crowd of witnesses. "Aunt Monica, what is she talking about?" "Shut up," Monica snarled, her mask finally slipping completely. "Both of you shut up right now." Ricky pushed back from the table entirely, his face horrified. "Monica, please tell me you didn't involve us in something illegal." "The private investigation was just the tip of the iceberg," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the silent restaurant. "Monica's been running a document forgery service for over 2 years. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, immigration papers, anything her clients needed to establish false identities or hide assets." Phoebe's phone clattered to the floor as the implications hit her. Oh my God, we're accessories. We helped her." "You helped her frame an innocent pregnant woman," I said firmly, using illegally obtained evidence and fabricated documents in front of dozens of witnesses. Monica lunged toward my folder, but Corey intercepted her with surprising speed. "Don't," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Don't make this any worse than it already is." "Worse?" Monica laughed hysterically. "Your precious wife is destroying our family with lies, and you're taking her side." "These aren't lies, Mom," Corey said, holding up DeVille's confession. "This is your signature on the contract, your bank account paying for fabricated evidence, your handwriting on the surveillance notes." The restaurant manager had called security. I could see 2 uniformed officers entering through the main entrance, their presence adding an official weight to the unfolding drama. Other diners were pulling out their phones, some filming, others presumably calling friends and family to share the incredible scene they were witnessing. Monica saw the security guards approaching, and her composure finally shattered completely. "This is all her fault," she screamed, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "She trapped my son with that baby, and when I tried to expose her, she framed me." The desperation in her voice was almost pitiable, but I felt no sympathy. She'd tried to destroy my marriage, my reputation, and my unborn child's future with elaborate lies and criminal conspiracy.
"Speaking of the baby," I said, finally reaching for the ultrasound photo that had started this entire confrontation, "I think it's time everyone saw the real timeline." 3 weeks earlier, I had been living in blissful ignorance, my biggest concern being morning sickness and finding the right prenatal vitamins. The discovery that would change everything came by pure accident, a moment of serendipity that probably saved my marriage and possibly my life. I'd left work early for my 8-week appointment with Dr. Richardson, arriving 20 minutes ahead of schedule, only to find the parking lot completely full. Frustrated and already running late after circling the block twice, I decided to park in the visitor spots at the office building next door, planning to move my car after the appointment. The elevator in the adjacent building was old and slow, and I found myself waiting on the third floor when I heard familiar laughter echoing from an open office door down the hallway. Monica's distinctive voice carried clearly through the corridor, followed by a man's voice I didn't recognize. Curiosity overrode politeness. I moved closer to the doorway, staying just out of sight behind a decorative pillar. What I saw through the glass partition made my blood run cold. Monica sat across from a heavy-set man in an expensive suit, spreading documents across his desk with the efficiency of someone conducting routine business. But these weren't ordinary papers. They were official-looking forms with government seals, blank spaces waiting to be filled in with whatever information their clients required. The pregnancy timeline needs to be handled delicately, Monica was saying, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to getting her way. Too obvious and it won't stand up to scrutiny. Too subtle and the impact is lost. The man, who I now knew was Anton DeVille, nodded thoughtfully. We've had success with the medical record approach. Doctors are surprisingly careless with their filing systems, especially the older practices. Perfect, Monica replied, sliding a thick envelope across his desk. I need enough documentation to prove the timing is impossible. Bank records showing suspicious activity, medical visits that don't match her story, maybe some photographic evidence of inappropriate meetings. My hands started shaking as the full scope of their conversation became clear. They weren't just planning to embarrass me. They were orchestrating a complete character assassination using fabricated evidence and forged documents. The hotel surveillance is particularly effective, DeVille continued, opening a laptop that showed what appeared to be a video editing program. We can place anyone anywhere with the right combination of existing footage and digital manipulation. Monica leaned forward eagerly. Show me. The laptop screen displayed security footage from various hotel lobbies, each clip featuring women of approximately my height and build entering and leaving at different times. With basic editing software, DeVille demonstrated how he could create convincing evidence of meetings that had never occurred. The beauty is in the ambiguity, he explained. We don't need perfect clarity, just enough visual similarity to plant doubt. Combined with fake financial records and manipulated medical documentation, it becomes nearly impossible to disprove. I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped it twice before managing to start recording. The audio quality wasn't perfect through the glass partition, but their words were clear enough to be understood. What about the husband? Monica asked. Corey's always been too trusting for his own good. Leave him to me, Monica replied with chilling confidence. I've been undermining his faith in her for weeks. Small comments about her behavior, innocent questions about her schedule, gentle suggestions that pregnancy makes women unpredictable. By the time we present the evidence, he'll be primed to believe the worst. The casual cruelty in her voice made my stomach turn. This wasn't just about me. Monica had been systematically poisoning my husband's mind, preparing him to accept her manufactured narrative. Timeline? DeVille asked, making notes in a leather-bound planner. 3 weeks, Monica said firmly. I want everything ready for their anniversary dinner. Maximum impact, maximum witnesses, maximum humiliation. Their anniversary dinner. Our anniversary dinner. The romantic evening I'd been planning for months transformed into an elaborate trap designed to destroy my life in the most public way possible. I recorded for another 10 minutes, documenting their discussion of forged bank statements, fabricated medical records, and manipulated photographic evidence. Each revelation was worse than the last, painting a picture of criminal conspiracy that went far beyond simple family drama. The appointment with Dr. Richardson felt surreal after what I'd witnessed. Sitting in the familiar examination room, hearing my baby's heartbeat through the Doppler, I struggled to process the magnitude of Monica's betrayal. This wasn't just about her disapproval of me. It was about her willingness to destroy innocent lives to maintain control over her son. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Corey slept peacefully beside me, oblivious to the storm that was building around us.
The recording on my phone felt like a ticking bomb, evidence of a conspiracy so elaborate and malicious that I could barely comprehend it.
But I also felt something else growing alongside the shock and fear, a cold, determined anger that would fuel every decision I made over the next 3 weeks. Monica wanted to play games with forged evidence and manufactured scandals. I would show her what real investigation looked like. The days following my discovery were a masterclass in psychological torture. I had to continue living normally with Corey, smiling and planning our anniversary celebration, all while knowing that his mother was orchestrating an elaborate scheme to destroy our marriage. Every casual comment from Monica during family dinners felt like a scalpel cutting deeper into my composure. The first real test came 2 days after I'd recorded their conversation. Corey arrived home from work with an expression I'd never seen before, confused, hurt, and suspicious all at once. He found me in the kitchen preparing dinner, the domestic scene suddenly feeling like a performance on a stage I hadn't known I was on. "Greta," he said carefully, setting his briefcase down with deliberate precision, "my mother mentioned something interesting today." My hands stilled on the vegetables I was chopping, but I kept my voice level. "Oh, what was that?" "She said she ran into Dr. Patterson at the grocery store. He mentioned you'd called his office asking about alternative timeline calculations for pregnancy dating." The lie was so smooth, so plausible, that I almost admired Monica's skill. Dr. Patterson was Corey's childhood physician, someone whose word carried automatic credibility with my husband. Of course, I'd never called his office about anything, but proving that would require accusations against his mother that I wasn't ready to make. "That's strange," I said, continuing with the vegetables to keep my hands busy. "I wonder why Dr. Patterson would think that." Corey studied my profile, searching for tells that would confirm his growing suspicions. Mom seemed pretty certain about the conversation. She said he was concerned about potential complications with early dating discrepancies. Each word felt like a small betrayal. My husband was testing me, laying traps based on his mother's manufactured evidence. The man who'd promised to trust and protect me was slowly being turned into another weapon in Monica's arsenal. "Corey," I said, finally turning to face him, "do you really think I would lie to you about something like this?" The question hung between us like a bridge neither of us wanted to cross. I watched him struggle with competing loyalties, his love for me against his lifelong trust in his mother. In that moment, I saw exactly how Monica's psychological manipulation was designed to work. "I don't know what to think anymore," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "The timing does seem unusual, and you have been acting differently lately." Of course I'd been acting differently. I was carrying the weight of his family's conspiracy while pretending everything was normal. The stress was eating me alive, but I couldn't explain the change in my behavior without revealing what I knew. "Pregnancy changes people," I said, weakly, hating how defensive I sounded. "Maybe," Corey replied, but his tone suggested he wasn't convinced. That night, I listened to him make a phone call he thought I couldn't hear. Standing in our bedroom, speaking in hushed tones to someone who was clearly his mother, discussing concerns about my behavior and inconsistencies in my story. "I just want to be sure," he whispered into the phone, "if there's any chance the timing is wrong." His voice trailed off, but I could imagine Monica's response. Gentle concern mixed with planted doubts, creating a narrative that positioned her as the voice of reason, protecting her son from a manipulative wife. The next morning brought a new psychological assault. Monica appeared at our door with fresh-baked muffins and a concerned expression that would have fooled anyone who didn't know her true nature. "I've been thinking about your situation, dear," she said, settling into our kitchen like she belonged there. "These early pregnancy symptoms can be so confusing. Have you considered getting a second opinion on the dating?" The suggestion sounded reasonable, caring even, but I recognized it for what it was, another step in her campaign to undermine my credibility. Any second opinion I sought would either be dismissed as biased or somehow become part of her evidence collection. "Dr. Richardson is very experienced," I replied carefully. Of course, Monica agreed quickly. I just worry that you might be putting too much pressure on yourself to have everything perfectly figured out. Sometimes when women are uncertain about timelines, they feel they need to be defensive. The word uncertain hit like a carefully aimed dart. She was planting seeds in my own mind now, making me question my own knowledge and memories. It was psychological warfare disguised as maternal concern. Over the following week, the campaign intensified. Monica began dropping by more frequently, always with some innocent reason, but managing to steer every conversation toward my pregnancy timeline. She asked seemingly casual questions about my symptoms, my doctor's appointments, my certainty about conception dates. Meanwhile, Corey grew more distant. I caught him studying me when he thought I wasn't looking, his face wearing the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to complete. The isolation was suffocating. I couldn't confide in friends without seeming paranoid or crazy. I couldn't confront Monica without evidence that would hold up against her manipulations. And I couldn't explain my behavior to Corey without destroying the careful investigation I was building. Every day felt like walking through a minefield, knowing that one wrong step would trigger the explosion Monica was so carefully preparing.
But I was preparing too, gathering evidence and building my own case while she systematically dismantled my life. The hardest part was maintaining hope that truth would be enough to save us. The turning point came when I realized that defending myself against Monica's lies would never be enough. I needed to go on the offensive, to build a case so comprehensive and damning that it would not only expose her conspiracy, but destroy her credibility permanently. The decision to fight back rather than simply endure marked the beginning of my transformation from victim to strategist. My first move was securing legal counsel. I contacted Sarah Chen, a criminal defense attorney I'd met through my college alumni network. Sarah specialized in white-collar crime and had a reputation for methodical preparation that reminded me of Monica's own thoroughness, but applied to legitimate purposes. "This is definitely criminal conspiracy," Sarah confirmed after reviewing my recording and the evidence I'd gathered. "Document forgery, identity theft, financial fraud. Your mother-in-law has been busy, but we need more than one conversation to build a solid case." She was right. Monica's operation was sophisticated enough to require equally sophisticated opposition. Sarah introduced me to Marcus Webb, a former FBI investigator who now worked private cases involving financial crimes. Marcus had the technical expertise to trace digital footprints and uncover the full scope of Monica's forgery business. "The beauty of criminals who think they're smarter than everyone else," Marcus explained during our first meeting, "is that they get overconfident. They leave trails because they believe they'll never be caught." Within 48 hours, Marcus had identified the offshore accounts Monica used to launder money from her forgery clients. The financial records painted a picture of a woman who'd been running illegal operations for years, using her social standing and charitable work as perfect cover for criminal enterprise. "Your mother-in-law has been very busy," Marcus reported, spreading bank statements across Farah's conference table. "Conservative estimate, she's processed over $2 million through fake document services in the past 3 years." The numbers were staggering, but they also provided leverage. Monica wasn't just planning to frame me, she was protecting a criminal empire that could send her to federal prison for decades. My next challenge was documenting her current conspiracy without alerting her to my investigation. This required careful choreography, appearing to go about my normal routine while actually gathering evidence at every opportunity. I started by visiting Dr. Richardson's office to get additional documentation of my pregnancy timeline. Not just the standard ultrasound photos, but detailed medical records showing hormone levels, growth measurements, and conception date calculations that would be impossible to dispute or manipulate. "Is everything all right?" Dr. Richardson asked when I requested copies of everything in my file. This level of documentation usually suggests legal concerns. "Preventative measures," I replied diplomatically. "Sometimes family situations require extra verification." He nodded knowingly. Apparently, pregnancy-related family drama was more common than I'd realized. The medical records became the foundation of my defense, but I needed more.
Marcus helped me trace the fabricated bank statements Monica planned to use, identifying the specific software and techniques DeVille employed to create convincing forgeries. See this font inconsistency? Marcus pointed to details invisible to untrained eyes. And the spacing here. Professional bank systems don't generate statements with these characteristics. This is desktop publishing software, probably something you could buy at any electronics store. We documented every flaw in Monica's evidence, building a technical case that would destroy her narrative even if she managed to present it convincingly to an audience of laypeople. But technical evidence wasn't enough. I needed to understand Monica's psychology, her motivations, and her vulnerabilities. This meant diving into her past, researching her background with the same thoroughness she'd applied to destroying me. What I discovered was illuminating and disturbing in equal measure. Monica had a history of controlling behavior that stretched back decades. Corey's father had divorced her when Corey was 12, citing manipulation and psychological abuse in court documents that were sealed but accessible through Marcus's investigative channels. She's done this before, I realized, reading through the divorce proceedings. The surveillance, the fabricated evidence, the systematic character assassination. Corey's father had faced accusations of infidelity backed by manufactured proof that closely resembled what Monica was planning for me. The difference was that he'd had fewer resources to fight back and no advance warning of her tactics. Armed with this historical pattern, I began reaching out to Monica's previous victims. Corey's father had remarried and moved to Corrigan, but he was willing to provide sworn testimony. 2 of her former business associates had similar stories about contracts that mysteriously disappeared and financial records that didn't match their own documentation. Monica Gilmore destroys people for sport, Corey's father told me during a carefully recorded phone conversation. The fact that she's targeting you means you represent some kind of threat to her control. Be very, very careful. His warning was sobering, but it also confirmed that I was on the right track. Monica's attack on me wasn't personal, it was tactical. I represented independence and loyalty that she couldn't control, making me a threat to her psychological dominance over Corey.
The final piece of my counter strategy involved timing. Monica had chosen our anniversary dinner as her stage for maximum humiliation. I would use the same venue to expose her crimes with maximum impact. But first, I needed to ensure that when the moment came, I would have allies in the room and evidence that couldn't be disputed or explained away. The trap was set. Now I just had to survive 3 more weeks of her psychological torture while pretending I suspected nothing. The final 3 weeks before our anniversary dinner became an elaborate performance where every interaction with Monica required Oscar-worthy acting. I had to appear increasingly vulnerable and defensive while secretly orchestrating the most important presentation of my life. The psychological strain was enormous, but knowing I held the truth gave me strength that Monica couldn't see or understand. My first priority was ensuring the right witnesses would be present at Bella Court. Monica had planned her guest list carefully, stacking the deck with family members who would support her narrative and strangers who would remember only the spectacle. I needed to subtly influence the dynamics without arousing suspicion. The solution came through Corey himself. During one of our increasingly strained conversations about anniversary plans, I mentioned feeling nervous about celebrating in such a public place. Maybe we should invite a few close friends, I suggested carefully, just so I don't feel so exposed if other diners are watching us. Corey, already feeling guilty about his growing suspicions, jumped at the chance to make me more comfortable. Of course, who would you like to invite? Maybe Dr. Richardson and his wife. They're always asking about our plans, and he's been so supportive during the pregnancy. The suggestion was calculated. Having my obstetrician present would add medical authority to whatever revelations came. Great idea, Corey agreed. Anyone else? What about inviting some people from your office? Your promotion celebration got postponed, so we could combine it with our anniversary. Within hours, our intimate dinner had expanded to include 2 couples from Corey's engineering firm, my college roommate Jessica, who happened to be a paralegal, and Dr. Richardson with his wife. Each addition was strategic, professional witnesses who could provide credibility and legal expertise when needed. Monica seemed delighted by the expanded guest list when Corey mentioned it to her.
More witnesses to my humiliation, she probably thought, not realizing she was walking into a carefully constructed courtroom. The second phase involved preparing my evidence presentation. Sarah Chen helped me organize everything into a compelling narrative that could be delivered quickly and effectively under pressure. You'll have maybe 10 minutes maximum before people lose interest or Monica tries to shut you down, Sarah warned. Every document needs to be immediately understandable. Every piece of evidence needs to tell a clear story. We created a presentation folder that mirrored Monica's own, professional, organized, and devastating. Bank records showing her money laundering operations, DeVille's signed confession detailing the forgery services, historical court documents proving her pattern of behavior, and most importantly, the recorded conversation that started everything. The key is staying calm, Marcus advised during our final preparation session. Monica will try to rattle you, make you seem hysterical or defensive. Your strength lies in being the rational one while she reveals her true nature. But my most important preparation was emotional. I practiced telling my story in front of mirrors, recording myself to check for signs of weakness or uncertainty. I rehearsed Monica's likely responses and prepared counter-arguments for every deflection she might attempt. The hardest part was maintaining my performance at home. Corey's suspicion had grown to the point where he was actively avoiding physical contact, finding excuses to work late or visit friends rather than spend evenings with me. His withdrawal hurt more than I'd expected, but it also strengthened my resolve. "I know you're going through something," he said one night, standing in our bedroom doorway like he was afraid to come closer. "I just wish you'd tell me what it is." The irony was crushing. He wanted honesty, but Monica had poisoned him against the truth before I could tell it. Any explanation I offered would sound like desperate lies from a woman caught in deception. "Soon," I promised, and it was the most honest thing I'd said to him in weeks. "After our anniversary dinner, everything will be clear." The final week brought unexpected challenges. Monica began dropping hints that she had additional information that might be difficult to hear. She was building anticipation for her revelation, probably hoping to increase my anxiety and make me crack under pressure. "I just want you to know," she said during one particularly cruel visit, "that whatever happens, I want what's best for Corey and the baby, even if that means some painful truths have to come out." Her performance was masterful, the reluctant messenger forced to deliver unwelcome news rather than the architect of an elaborate frame job. I nodded and thanked her for her concern, all while imagining her face when she realized how completely her plan had been turned against her. 2 days before the dinner, Dr. Richardson called with news that would add the perfect final piece to my presentation. "I have your additional test results," he said. "The hormone progression analysis you requested shows a perfectly normal pregnancy timeline, very precise dating actually. Conception would have occurred within a 12-hour window." A 12-hour window that fell exactly in the middle of the romantic weekend Corey and I had spent at the mountain cabin 2 weeks before his business trip to Denver.
The timing wasn't just provable, it was irrefutable. Monica had built her entire conspiracy around a timeline that medical science could demolish with mathematical precision. She had no idea what was coming. The night before our anniversary dinner, I lay awake listening to Corey's breathing, knowing it might be the last time we shared a bed for months or possibly forever. Not because of Monica's lies, but because of the magnitude of what I was about to reveal. Even if I proved my innocence, the fact that his mother was a criminal would shatter his world in ways that might not be repairable. I slipped out of bed at 3 a.m. and made my way to the kitchen, where my presentation materials were hidden in what Monica would never think to search, the freezer, wrapped in aluminum foil behind frozen vegetables. The cold bit into my fingers as I retrieved everything, laying it out on the kitchen table like evidence in a war room. The ultrasound photos seemed to glow under the overhead light. The date stamps were clear, unambiguous, devastating to Monica's timeline theory. But more than that, they showed the curved spine and tiny limbs of my baby, our baby, who would grow up knowing that their grandmother had tried to destroy their family before they were even born. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen. "Legal documents filed with courthouse. If this goes south tonight, we're ready to move forward with charges immediately."
The backup plan was crucial. Monica's crimes were serious enough to warrant federal investigation, but proving criminal conspiracy required either her confession or overwhelming evidence of intent. Tonight would provide both. Another message, this one from Marcus. DeVille is in protective custody. He's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Your mother-in-law's operation is finished either way. The knowledge that Anton DeVille was already cooperating with authorities gave me confidence, but also urgency. If Monica suspected that her accomplice had been compromised, she might accelerate her timeline or become desperate enough to try something more dangerous than public humiliation. I made coffee and settled into the quiet darkness of pre-dawn, reviewing my strategy one final time. The key was allowing Monica to commit fully to her performance before revealing the trap. Every lie she told in front of witnesses would become evidence. Every piece of fabricated proof she presented would demonstrate premeditation. At 6 a.m., Corey emerged from the bedroom looking haggard and conflicted. He'd been losing sleep too, torn between the woman he'd married and the mother who'd raised him. "Big day," he said, attempting casual conversation while pouring coffee with shaking hands. "Yes," I agreed, studying his profile in the morning light. "Everything changes today." He glanced at me sharply, as if trying to decipher hidden meaning in my words. "Greta, if there's something you need to tell me—" "There is," I said honestly, "but it needs to wait until tonight. Some things require the right audience to be properly understood." The morning crawled by with excruciating slowness. Monica called twice, ostensibly to confirm dinner arrangements, but really to gauge my emotional state. I played the role of an increasingly nervous wife, giving her exactly the anxiety she wanted to see. "I'm just worried about the restaurant being so crowded. What if people overhear our private conversation?" "Don't worry, dear," Monica replied with barely concealed satisfaction. "Sometimes private matters need public resolution. People understand when families have difficult discussions." By afternoon, I was ready. The evidence was organized, my witnesses were briefed on their roles, and my emotional armor was as strong as I could make it. But there was one final preparation that required careful timing. At 4 p.m., exactly 3 hours before dinner, I called Monica. "I need to see you," I said, injecting just the right amount of desperation into my voice. "Before tonight, there's something I have to tell you privately." The bait was irresistible. Monica probably thought I was going to confess, to beg for mercy, or try to negotiate some kind of deal. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near the restaurant, no doubt planning to record our conversation as additional evidence of my guilt. What she didn't know was that I was recording too. The coffee shop was perfect for what I needed, public enough to feel safe, but quiet enough for intimate conversation. Monica arrived precisely on time, her face wearing an expression of false concern mixed with predatory anticipation. "You sounded so upset on the phone," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "What's troubling you, dear?" "I know what you're planning tonight," I said simply, watching her face for the micro-expressions that would reveal her true thoughts. Monica's mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. Surprise, then calculation, then renewed confidence. "I'm not planning anything except a lovely anniversary dinner with family." "The evidence you have," I continued, "the bank statements, the hotel records, the private investigator's report, I know it's all fabricated." Now Monica's smile turned genuine, but it was the smile of a predator who'd cornered wounded prey. "Prove it," she said softly. "I will," I promised. "Tonight, in front of everyone." Monica leaned back in her chair, studying me with new interest. "You really think you can outsmart me? Child, I've been playing these games since before you were born." "I'm counting on it," I replied, standing to leave. "See you at dinner, Monica. It's going to be quite the show." As I walked away, I heard her laugh, cold, confident, and completely unaware that she just confessed a criminal conspiracy on a recording that would destroy her life. The trap was set, the stage was prepared, and in 3 hours, justice would finally have its moment.
The dining room at Bella Court had been transformed into an arena, though most of the participants didn't realize they were gladiators yet. Monica had orchestrated the seating arrangement with military precision, our table positioned in the center of the restaurant like a stage, with clear sightlines from every other occupied table. The lighting was perfect for drama, the acoustics designed to carry conversation throughout the elegant space. I arrived precisely on time, wearing the navy dress Corey had bought me for our first anniversary. The symbolism felt important, a reminder of better times before Monica's poison had infected our marriage. Corey looked handsome but haunted, his smile forced as he helped me into my chair. "You look beautiful," he said, but his eyes held a sadness that broke my heart. He was grieving our relationship before it was even officially dead, convinced by weeks of manipulation that tonight would bring devastating revelations about his wife's betrayal. Monica made her entrance 15 minutes later, flanked by Erica and trailed by Ricky and Phoebe. She wore black, funeral attire for the marriage she was about to destroy. Her manila folder was clutched in her manicured hands like a weapon she couldn't wait to deploy. "Sorry we're late," she announced to the growing table of witnesses. "We had some last-minute preparations to finish." Dr. Richardson and his wife had arrived early and were already studying the tension with professional interest. My college friend Jessica sat beside them, her paralegal training evident in how she observed the family dynamics with sharp attention. Corey's colleagues from the engineering firm filled out the witness list, their presence adding professional credibility to whatever was about to unfold. The server approached with practiced hospitality, but Monica waved him away with imperial authority. "We'll need a few minutes before ordering. We have some family business to discuss first." The phrase family business sent ripples of uncomfortable anticipation through our expanded table. Other diners began paying attention, sensing the drama that was building like atmospheric pressure before a storm. "So," Monica began, her voice carrying the ceremonial weight of a judge about to deliver a verdict, "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room." She opened her manila folder with theatrical precision, the papers inside rustling like autumn leaves. Every eye at the table focused on her hands as she withdrew the fabricated bank statements, the falsified hotel records, and the manipulated surveillance footage. "Greta," Monica continued, her voice gaining strength and volume with each word, "we need to talk about your pregnancy timeline." The accusation landed like a bomb in the center of our anniversary celebration. Dr. Richardson's eyebrows shot up toward his hairline, while Corey's colleagues exchanged glances that mixed confusion with growing interest. Jessica leaned forward slightly, her legal instincts recognizing the opening moves of a character assassination. "According to the dates you've given us," Monica announced, spreading the forged documents across the white tablecloth like evidence in a trial, conception would have occurred during the week of March 15th through 22nd. She paused for dramatic effect, letting the dates sink in while other diners strained to hear the family drama unfolding at the center table. The elderly couple from earlier in the evening had actually moved to a closer table, abandoning all pretense of privacy. "The problem," Monica continued, her voice rising with righteous indignation, "is that Corey was in Denver that entire week, alone, working 18-hour days on the Silas Corporation merger." From her folder came the hotel receipts, the restaurant bills, even photographs of Corey at client dinners during the supposed conception window. Each piece of evidence was legitimate, which made Monica's narrative all the more convincing to an audience that didn't know the real timeline. "But that's not all," Erica chimed in, clearly unable to contain her excitement any longer. "Show them the bank records, Monica." The fabricated financial statements appeared next, showing mysterious cash withdrawals and unexplained expenses during critical dates. To untrained eyes, they looked completely legitimate: professional letterhead, official formatting, convincing details that painted a picture of a woman maintaining a secret relationship. "And finally," Monica declared, producing the tablet with surveillance footage, "we have visual evidence of Greta's activities during my son's absence." The grainy hotel lobby video played for the assembled witnesses, showing a woman of my approximate build entering and leaving at times that would support Monica's infidelity narrative. The image quality was poor enough to prevent definitive identification, but clear enough to plant seeds of doubt. Corey's face had gone ashen as he watched his mother's presentation. Even knowing this was coming, seeing the manufactured evidence laid out so professionally was devastating. His colleagues were studying me with expressions that mixed sympathy with judgment, while Dr. Richardson looked genuinely confused by the medical implications. "This is all very concerning," Dr. Richardson said carefully, "but I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting." Monica's smile turned predatory. "I'm not suggesting anything, doctor. I'm stating a fact." She turned her gaze directly to me, her eyes blazing with triumph. "My son's wife has been unfaithful, and the child she's carrying isn't his." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Every conversation in the restaurant stopped as diners processed what they'd just heard. Servers paused in their duties, management looked nervous, and our table became the unwilling center of a public spectacle that would be remembered and discussed for months.
Monica had played her hand perfectly, building to this moment with devastating effectiveness. The evidence looked convincing, the presentation was flawless, and the audience was completely captivated. She had no idea that she just walked into the most carefully constructed trap of her criminal career. The silence that followed Monica's devastating accusation was deafening, broken only by the subtle clink of silverware from distant tables and the soft hum of restaurant ventilation. Every person at our table seemed frozen in tableau, processing the magnitude of what had just been alleged in such a public forum. I felt the weight of their collective stare like physical pressure against my skin. Dr. Richardson's confusion was genuine. The medical timeline Monica had presented contradicted everything in my official records. Jessica's paralegal training was evident in how she studied the documents spread across our cable, her expression suggesting she'd spotted inconsistencies that others had missed. Corey looked like he was drowning, his face cycling through emotions so rapidly I could barely catalog them. Betrayal, confusion, humiliation, and underneath it all, a growing anger at being put in this impossible position by the two women he was supposed to trust most. But I remained perfectly still, my hands folded calmly in my lap, watching Monica bask in what she believed was her moment of absolute triumph. She had orchestrated this perfectly. The public venue, the professional presentation, the devastating evidence that seemed impossible to refute. Her confidence was absolute. "Well," Monica demanded when the silence stretched beyond her comfort level, "don't you have anything to say for yourself?" I took a deliberate sip of my water, noting how the simple action drew every eye at the table. The power of remaining calm while others expected hysteria was intoxicating. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady and clear. "I'm impressed," I said simply. "The presentation was very thorough, very professional." Monica's eyebrows shot up in surprise. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. No tears, no denials, no desperate attempts at explanation. Just calm acknowledgement that bordered on admiration. "Professional?" Erica sputtered. "We've just proven that you—" "Have you?" I interrupted gently, finally reaching for my own manila folder. The action sent a visible shock through her carefully constructed confidence. This wasn't in her script. "What is that?" Monica demanded, her voice carrying the first hint of uncertainty since the evening began. "Context," I replied simply. "The one thing your investigation seems to have missed." Corey leaned forward, his face showing the first spark of hope he'd displayed in weeks. "Greta, what are you talking about?" But I wasn't ready to reveal everything yet. Monica needed to commit fully to her narrative before I dismantled it piece by piece. The trap required her complete investment in the lies she'd constructed. "Monica," I addressed her directly, "before I respond to your accusations, I'm curious about something. This investigation of yours,
It must have taken considerable time and resources. When exactly did you begin suspecting me of infidelity? The question caught her off guard. She had expected desperate denials or emotional breakdowns, not cross-examination from her intended victim. A mother's intuition never sleeps, she replied, falling back on her earlier response. I knew something was wrong from the moment I announced the pregnancy. So you immediately hired a private investigator? I gathered information as it became available, including accessing my private banking records. That's quite sophisticated for maternal intuition. Dr. Richardson was watching this exchange with growing fascination. His medical training recognized the precision of my questioning. Jessica had her phone out, probably taking notes or possibly recording. The business dinner 2 tables away had abandoned all pretense of their own conversation. I did what was necessary to protect my son, Monica said, but her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. Of course, I agreed pleasantly. Protection is so important in families, which brings me to an interesting question about your evidence. I opened my folder and withdrew a single document, the confession I'd recorded that afternoon in the coffee shop. Would you like to explain why you told me, and I quote, "I've been playing these games since before you were born"? What games were you referring to, Monica? The color drained from her face so rapidly I thought she might faint. Erica grabbed her aunt's arm, probably thinking the same thing. Around us, I could feel the shift in atmosphere as witnesses began to sense that the story had more layers than they had initially understood. That's taken out of context, she stammered. Is it? Because I have the full recording here if anyone would like to hear the context. Corey's voice was barely above a whisper when he spoke. Mom, what is she talking about? But Monica had recovered some of her composure, rallying for what she probably thought would be her final attack. She's trying to deflect attention from her own crimes by attacking me. It's exactly what guilty people do when they're cornered. Crimes, I repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting word choice. Speaking of crimes, I wonder if everyone here knows about your business relationship with Anton DeVille. The name hit the table like a physical blow. Monica actually recoiled while Erica's wineglass slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers. I think, I said, standing slowly from my chair, it's time everyone learned the truth about timing.
The mention of Anton DeVille's name had transformed the atmosphere at our table from tense anticipation to electric dread. Monica's carefully constructed mask was beginning to crack, revealing glimpses of the panic underneath. But she wasn't finished fighting yet. I don't know what you're implying, she said, her voice rising with forced indignation, but I won't sit here and be attacked by someone who's trying to cover up her own infidelity. Infidelity? I repeated, savoring the word. Such a serious accusation. The kind that requires serious evidence. The kind that, how did you put it earlier? Sometimes needs public resolution. I withdrew the first document from my folder, a bank statement that made Monica's eyes widen with recognition. But this wasn't one of her fabricated documents. This was real, showing wire transfers from her personal account to DeVille investigations over the past 3 months. Dr. Richardson, I said, addressing the medical professional whose presence had been so carefully orchestrated. As an expert in pregnancy dating, what would you say about a timeline investigation that began 3 months before the pregnancy was even announced? The doctor leaned forward, studying the bank records with professional interest. That would suggest premeditation rather than medical concern, he said carefully. Investigation typically follows suspicion, not the reverse. Monica's face had gone ashen, but Erica jumped to her defense with desperate loyalty. That proves nothing. Maybe Monica had other reasons to hire an investigator. Oh, she did, I agreed, pulling out the next document. Multiple reasons. Isn't that right, Monica? Would you like to tell everyone about your document alteration services, or shall I? The phrase document alteration services sent a visible shock through our audience. Jessica's paralegal training kicked in immediately. She recognized the legal implications of what I was suggesting. Corey's colleagues exchanged glances that mixed confusion with growing alarm.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Monica said, but her voice was shaking now. Really? Because Anton DeVille had quite a lot to say about your business relationship when he was offered immunity in exchange for cooperation with federal investigators. The word federal landed like a bomb. Several witnesses actually gasped audibly, while others leaned forward to ensure they didn't miss any details. The restaurant around us had essentially become our theater, with dozens of diners hanging on every word. I withdrew DeVille's signed confession, letting it rest on the table where everyone could see the official letterhead and notary seal. This is Mr. DeVille's sworn statement detailing the services he provided for you over the past 2 years. Document forgery, identity theft, financial record manipulation, quite an impressive resume. Monica tried to grab the confession, but Corey intercepted her hand with surprising speed. "Don't," he said quietly, his voice carrying a warning that stopped her cold. "Corey, you can't believe," she started. "I don't know what to believe anymore, but I'm going to hear what Greta has to say." The support from my husband, however tentative, gave me strength to continue. I pulled out the recorded conversation from that afternoon, setting my phone on the table with deliberate ceremony. "This is from our conversation this afternoon," I announced to the gathered witnesses. "Monica, would you like to explain to everyone what you meant when you said you'd been playing these games since before I was born?" I pressed play, and Monica's voice filled the suddenly silent restaurant. "You really think you can outsmart me? Child, I've been playing these games since before you were born." The audio quality was crystal clear, every word carrying across our table and beyond. Other diners had stopped eating entirely, their attention focused on the drama unfolding in their midst. "That could mean anything," Erica said weakly, but her defense lacked conviction. "Could it?" I asked, producing another document. "This is Monica's divorce proceeding from 1995. Corey, you might find your father's testimony particularly interesting." Corey's face went white when he recognized the official court documents. His parents' divorce had been sealed, the details hidden from him his entire life. Now those secrets were about to be exposed in the most public way possible. "She fabricated evidence then, too," I continued, reading from the court transcript. "False financial records, manufactured surveillance footage, forged correspondence. The judge called it a pattern of systematic deception designed to destroy the respondent's character and credibility." The words hit our table like physical blows. Monica was shrinking in her chair, while Erica looked like she was going to be sick. Ricky and Phoebe sat frozen, finally understanding the magnitude of what they'd become involved in. Dr. Richardson broke the stunned silence. "Are you saying this entire accusation against Greta was fabricated?" "Not just fabricated," I replied, pulling out the recorded hotel surveillance footage that showed the real woman entering and leaving, someone who looked nothing like me when viewed in high resolution. The tablet showed the enhanced footage, revealing that the woman in the lobby was actually one of DeVille's associates, filmed specifically to create false evidence. The deception was so elaborate, so professionally executed, that even the witnesses who'd believed Monica's presentation began to look disturbed. "My God," Jessica whispered, her paralegal training recognizing the scope of the conspiracy. Monica finally found her voice, but it came out as a desperate whisper. "You don't understand. I was protecting my family."
From what? I asked. From your son's happiness? From his choice in partners? Or from losing control over his life? The question hung in the air like smoke from a controlled explosion, and I could see the exact moment when even Monica's staunchest supporters realized they'd be used as weapons in a criminal conspiracy. But I wasn't finished yet. The revelation that Monica had orchestrated similar destruction during her own divorce sent shockwaves through our assembled witnesses, but I could see she was still calculating escape routes. Criminals like Monica didn't surrender easily. They fought until every option was exhausted and every bridge was burned. "This is all circumstantial," she said desperately, grasping for any thread that might save her. "Coincidences and suppositions designed to make me look guilty when the real issue is my son's wife's infidelity." It was exactly the response I'd anticipated. Monica was doubling down on her original narrative, hoping that attacking my character would somehow deflect attention from her criminal conspiracy. She had no idea that I'd saved the most devastating evidence for last. "Circumstantial," I repeated thoughtfully, reaching into my folder one final time. "You're right that some evidence requires interpretation,
but medical science tends to be more definitive. I withdrew the ultrasound photos that had started this entire confrontation, but not the standard prints I'd brought to previous appointments. These were enhanced images with detailed measurements, growth charts, and, most importantly, precise dating calculations that would be impossible to dispute. Dr. Richardson, I handed him the medical documentation, would you mind reviewing these hormone progression reports and dating calculations? I'm particularly interested in your professional opinion about the conception window. The doctor studied the documents with the thoroughness of someone whose career depended on accuracy. His eyebrows rose as he processed the detailed measurements and laboratory results. "This is remarkably precise," he said, his voice carrying the authority of medical expertise. "The hormone levels show a perfectly normal progression consistent with conception occurring between March 7th and March 8th. The dates hit the table like bullets. March 7th and 8th, the romantic weekend Corey and I had spent at the mountain cabin 2 full weeks before his business trip to Denver. The weekend where we'd decided to start trying for a baby, where we'd made love by the fireplace and dreamed about our future family." "That's impossible," Erica whispered, grabbing Monica's fabricated timeline. "According to our research, Corey was in Denver during the conception window." "According to your research," Dr. Richardson replied with professional precision, "the conception window was artificially shifted by nearly 2 weeks. These medical records show unambiguous proof that conception occurred while Mr. Gilmore was very much present and accounted for." I pulled out my phone and showed the screen to our audience. Photos from our mountain cabin weekend, time-stamped and geotagged, showing Corey and me hiking, cooking dinner, curled up by the fire. Every image proved he was exactly where he should have been during the actual conception window. "The real timeline," I said quietly, "shows a loving couple on a romantic getaway making the conscious decision to expand their family. Not an affair, not deception, not anything except 2 people in love creating new life together." Monica's world was collapsing in real time. Every piece of evidence she had carefully manufactured was being systematically destroyed by medical science and photographic proof. Her timeline was wrong, her surveillance was fabricated, and her entire conspiracy was unraveling in front of dozens of witnesses. "You trapped my son with that baby!" she screamed suddenly, her composure finally shattering completely. The accusation was so divorced from reality that several diners at nearby tables actually laughed. Here was a woman who'd spent months fabricating evidence of infidelity, suddenly claiming I'd trapped her son by getting pregnant during a romantic weekend we'd both planned and anticipated. "You're absolutely right about the timing, Monica," I said, echoing the words that had started this confrontation. "But not in the way you think." I stood up slowly, every eye in the restaurant fixed on my final revelation. The timing was perfect, just not for the reasons you fabricated. The silence that followed my revelation stretched like a taut wire before snapping with devastating consequences. Monica sat frozen in her chair, her face cycling through expressions of disbelief, rage, and dawning horror as the magnitude of her exposure sank in. Around us, the restaurant had become a courtroom where justice was being served alongside the evening's entrees. Dr. Richardson was the first to break the stunned quiet. "Mrs. Gilmore," he said, his professional authority cutting through the chaos, "are you telling me you fabricated medical evidence to frame a pregnant woman for infidelity?" The clinical precision of his question made Monica's crimes sound even more monstrous. Several diners at nearby tables actually gasped, while others pulled out their phones to call friends and family about the incredible drama they were witnessing. "I was protecting my son," Monica whispered, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "By committing federal crimes?" Jessica demanded, her paralegal training recognizing the serious legal implications. "Document forgery, identity theft, financial fraud? You're looking at decades in prison." The word prison seemed to snap Monica out of her stunned state. She lunged across the table trying to grab my evidence folder, but Corey caught her wrist with reflexes I'd never seen before.
"Stop," he said quietly, his voice carrying a finality that made everyone freeze. "Just stop." Monica stared at her son's hand restraining her, probably seeing for the first time that she'd lost him completely.
Not just his trust or his affection, but his fundamental belief in who she was as a person. "Corey, you have to understand," she started. "I understand that you hired criminals to destroy my wife," he interrupted, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I understand that you've been lying to me for months. I understand that you tried to make me believe the mother of my child was unfaithful when you knew she wasn't." Erica began crying, not tears of sympathy, but the panicked sobs of someone realizing they'd become an accessory to serious crimes. "I didn't know," she kept repeating. "Monica, you said you had proof. You said you were protecting the family." "You all helped," I said quietly, looking around the table at Monica's accomplices. "Every one of you participated in a criminal conspiracy to destroy an innocent woman's reputation." Ricky pushed back from the table entirely, his face green with nausea. "We need lawyers. God, we all need lawyers." The restaurant manager appeared with 2 security guards, their presence adding official weight to the unfolding drama. Other diners were openly filming now, the story destined to spread through social media within hours. "Ma'am," the manager said diplomatically, "I'm afraid we're going to need to ask your party to leave. Several guests have complained about the disturbance." But Monica wasn't ready to surrender. In a final desperate gambit, she stood up and addressed the entire restaurant, her voice carrying with theatrical desperation. "This woman seduced my son and trapped him with a pregnancy," she announced to the crowd. "She's a manipulator who destroys families for money." The accusation fell flat in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Instead of sympathy, Monica received stares of disgust and disbelief from an audience that had witnessed her systematic deception being exposed. "Actually," Dr. Richardson said, rising to his full professional authority, "this woman is carrying a baby conceived in love during a planned romantic weekend. The only manipulation here has been yours." His medical testimony, delivered in front of dozens of witnesses, was the final nail in Monica's social coffin. The consequences were immediate and devastating, spreading through the room like wildfire as the truth replaced the lies Monica had worked so hard to construct. Her reign of psychological terror was over. The 3 months following that catastrophic dinner at Bellacourt passed like scenes from someone else's life. Monica's social destruction was swift and complete. Within 48 hours, the story had spread through our entire community with the efficiency of a wildfire in drought season. The video footage captured by restaurant patrons became local legend, shared and reshared until everyone knew about the mother-in-law who'd tried to frame her pregnant daughter-in-law with fabricated evidence. The legal consequences followed just as quickly. Federal investigators, armed with DeVille's cooperation and my documented evidence, moved against Monica's forgery operation with devastating efficiency. Her offshore accounts were frozen, her assets seized, and her passport confiscated pending trial. The woman who'd once commanded respect in charity circles and social clubs now faced 23 federal charges and the very real prospect of spending her remaining years in prison. Erica disappeared entirely, moving to another state under cover of night when she realized her association with Monica had made her unemployable in our city. Ricky and Phoebe managed to avoid criminal charges by cooperating fully with investigators, but their marriage didn't survive the stress of being connected to such a public scandal. The most profound changes, however, were happening within the walls of our own home. Corey had moved back into our bedroom the night after the dinner, but the man who returned was fundamentally different from the one who'd left. The easy trust that had characterized our early relationship was gone, replaced by something harder earned but potentially more durable. "I keep thinking about all the times she made comments about you," he said one evening as we sat in our living room, his hand resting protectively on my growing belly. "Little suggestions that you were secretive or manipulative. I thought she was just being overprotective, but she was poisoning me against you from the beginning." The revelation that his mother had been systematically undermining our marriage for months was almost harder for Corey to process than her criminal activities. At least the forgery and fraud were clearly wrong. The psychological manipulation felt more personal, more intimate in its betrayal. "She's sick," I said, though the words felt inadequate to describe the calculated cruelty of Monica's behavior. Mentally ill people can be incredibly convincing when they're focused on a target. But even as we worked to rebuild our relationship, the damage lingered in ways that surprised us both. Corey developed an almost obsessive need to verify information, double-checking facts and cross-referencing sources in ways that would have seemed paranoid before his mother's deception. I found myself studying his reactions for signs of doubt, hyper-aware of any hesitation that might suggest lingering suspicion. The pregnancy, ironically, became our bridge back to each other. Every doctor's appointment provided new evidence of our baby's healthy development. Every ultrasound reinforced the timeline that had exposed Monica's lies. When we learned we were having a daughter, Corey cried with a mixture of joy and relief that suggested he was finally beginning to heal.
"She'll never meet her grandmother," he said that day, his voice carrying both sadness and determination. "But maybe that's for the best. Some family traditions need to end." The legal proceedings continued in the background of our recovery, but Monica's fate was never really in doubt. The evidence was overwhelming, her accomplice was cooperating, and her pattern of behavior stretched back decades. Her conviction was inevitable. The only question was whether she'd accept a plea bargain or force a trial that would further expose her crimes to public scrutiny. In the end, she chose the plea bargain, probably hoping to minimize the humiliation of having her methods dissected in open court. Our daughter Emma was born on a crisp November morning, 6 months after Monica's conviction and sentencing. As I held her against my chest in the hospital room, studying her perfect features that carried traces of both Corey and me, I felt a profound sense of completion that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with truth finally being allowed to flourish. Monica received 15 years in federal prison, a sentence that effectively meant she would never be part of her granddaughter's life. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, had been particularly harsh in her sentencing remarks, noting that Monica's crimes weren't just about fraud and forgery, but about the deliberate destruction of family bonds for personal control. The defendant showed no remorse, Judge Harrison had said, and demonstrated a pattern of manipulation spanning decades. Her actions endangered not just financial institutions and government agencies, but the psychological well-being of her own family members. Corey attended the sentencing hearing alone. I had chosen not to go, partly because of my advancing pregnancy, but mostly because I had no interest in watching Monica's final performance. Some chapters of our story needed to close without my participation. "She looked smaller," Corey told me that evening, his voice carrying a mixture of sadness and relief. Broken, almost, like the prison uniform had shrunk more than just her body. But even as we found peace with Monica's absence, her impact on our lives continued in unexpected ways. Corey developed an almost protective fierceness about our small family that sometimes surprised me with its intensity. He installed security cameras around our house, researched background check services, and maintained detailed files about our financial records and medical history. "I won't let anyone threaten what we've built," he explained when I asked about his new vigilance. "Not family, not friends, not anyone." The experience had taught us both that evil could wear the mask of love, that destruction could masquerade as protection. But it had also shown us the power of truth when it's carefully documented and strategically revealed. I kept the manila folder from that night at Bella Court, stored in our home safe alongside our other important documents. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept lies, even when those lies come wrapped in the authority of family tradition. Emma's nursery was painted yellow and green, neutral colors that Monica had once criticized as indecisive, but they felt perfect to us, representing hope and growth without the rigid expectations that had poisoned previous generations of Corey's family. On quiet evenings, when Emma slept peacefully in her crib and Corey worked on his engineering projects at the kitchen table, I sometimes reflected on the journey that had brought us to this peaceful moment. The woman who had tried to destroy us was spending her days in a concrete cell, while we were building the kind of family that thrived on honesty rather than control. "Do you ever regret it?" Corey asked one night, looking up from his laptop. "Sometimes I think we could have handled it differently." I considered the question seriously, weighing the months of stress and uncertainty against the clarity that had emerged from exposing the truth. No, I said finally, my hand resting on Emma's baby monitor. Some fights choose you. The only real choice is whether you're going to win them. The ultrasound photo that had started everything was framed now, hanging in Emma's nursery beside her birth certificate and hospital bracelet. Not as evidence anymore, but as proof that love, when it's real, creates its own irrefutable timeline. And in our house, truth would always be the foundation upon which our family was built.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.